Thank you guys for joining me. So today I wanted to talk about LeBron James's legacy. Now, unfortunately, his legacy is not to the point where I think it could possibly have been. Unfortunately, LeBron James got a lot of bad breaks, and I know there's a lot of LeBron James haters, but you hear me out on this. So when you talk about the top 10 players of all time, let's go on ESPN's list. So top 10 players of all time. You have Shaquille O'Neal, who, in my opinion, is the most dominant player of all time. He was able to get on a team with Orlando that was really able to make something happen. Now they were able to get a top pick, Penny Hardaway. They were able to make something happen. They got to the finals. They lost, but he goes to the Lakers. He makes something of himself. They win 3 championships with Kobe Bryant. So he gets another great player right off the bat. Then goes and a great team all the way around and gets a great coach and organization. Then he goes to Miami, wins another championship again, gets another great coach, one of the best of all time with Pat Riley. He gets Dwayne Wade and a great organization. So that's his career. Number 9, Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe Bryant went to a historic franchise. He had a Hall of Fame head coach, Phil Jackson. He got Shaquille O'Neal. He lost pretty much everything, started from scratch, got Phil back, got Derek Fisher back, got Pau Gasol. Went to the finals, lost to Boston, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rondo, Perkins. Then he goes, beats Orlando with Dwight Howard, wins his first championship without Shaq. Still with that great organization, wins the second, so wins a repeat. He ends up beating the Celtics the second time at Game 7 with Ron Artest hitting that shot. So he was able to hit a player of the caliber of Ron Artest as well, which is, not prime Ron Artest, but he was definitely up there still. So that's Kobe Bryant. Tim Duncan. Now, that Spurs team, as many of you guys I'm sure know, was a really good team. The only reason why they got that pick as well, they got lucky in the lottery. But they got lucky in the lottery because Robinson was out. So with the Admiral out, they had a horrible record. They get Tim Duncan, and they make that push that they end up making throughout the 20 years that he was there. Now he got picked up by a great organization. He got picked up by an organization that was able to draft, trade well. They got Kawhi Leonard for for Hill. The fact that they were able to do that, it's amazing. They were able to get Mono Ginobili and Tony Parker in the draft. No one knew who those guys were. They were able to figure it out. He had Greg Popovich, was top 3 best coach of all time. If you figure Red number 1, Phil number 2, or you could flip them back and forth, and then you have Greg Popovich 3. And I don't think many people would even argue that fact. So you figure he had all of that going for him. He's no doubt a great player. Number 7 on the list, Larry Bird, Larry Legend. You figure Larry Legend got to a historic franchise with the Celtics. Again, they were able to draft well. They got Dennis Johnson, they had Danny Ainge, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish. They had a team. Bill Walton was coming off the bench for them. They had a team. And for the most part of the 80s, between him and Magic Johnson, they really just battled it out for a championship for the majority of the point. Now you have the Sixers early, in the 80s as well, and then you have the Pistons later on. But when you're talking about the 80s basketball, first thing that comes to mind is Boston Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers. So you can't say anything other than he got put in the perfect situation for himself. There you go, Larry Legend. Number 6 on the list, Wilt Chamberlain. Now, a lot of people would argue he should be higher on this list, and I agree with you. And honestly, I could make the same video about this gentleman that I could actually make about LeBron James, that he could have been put in a lot better situation. Unfortunately, he didn't. But he was just a great player. Luckily had the opportunity to win a couple championships, and winning one with Jerry West was something special, definitely. Uh, uh, there you go, Wilt Chamberlain, number 6. Not going to spend much time on Magic Johnson. We all know what's going on with him. Went with the Lakers, had a great coach, had a great organization, had a great general manager, had a number 2 and a number 3 for the majority of his career. Magic Johnson, number 5. Not really going to spend much time on pretty much the top 5 because we already know what's going on. But you had Bill Russell, number 4. Bill Russell, had a super team before it was a super team. I mean, he won more championships than rings. He was obviously put in a great situation. He was a great team player. He was a great teammate, and they were able to win. So there you go. There's your number 4. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the captain. You know, won his championship in Milwaukee, forced his trade to Los Angeles, gets a great teammate in Magic Johnson, wins more championships, number 1 scorer of all time, play with the Lakers, as you can see, is the theme. Not going to spend much time on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but he obviously got put in a pretty good situation. LeBron James' situation, which is the focus point of this video, but to talk about it real quick, goes to a god-awful team in Cleveland, somehow miraculously gets to the finals, gets swept by a better team in San Antonio, leaves in 2010 to go to the Heat, loses to Dallas, wins 2 championships, loses the next championship against the Spurs, goes back home so he can win a championship, gets to the finals the first year, where players have never been to the playoffs before, gets to the finals, and everyone gets hurt. Loses to the Golden State Warriors, has the greatest comeback in NBA history, down 3-1, beats the Golden State Warriors the next year, which then they got Kevin Durant, which changed everything. No one was beating that team. I would like to see the Bulls beat that team. But this is why we're having the conversation. So there you go. Number 2, LeBron James. Not going to spend much time at all. We all know Jordan's legacy, where he won 3-peat, and then he won another 3-peat. But the idea of the story is that Jordan had, and most of these players on this top 10 list, they all had a great situation. I mean, barring Wilt Chamberlain, just about everyone had a darn near perfect situation. I mean, a lot of them shouldn't even have been drafted where they were or put in that situation. Magic Johnson wasn't supposed to be drafted to the Lakers. They got super lucky in how it went with the Magic or with the Jazz. You figure with Tim Duncan, they also got lucky. Kobe wasn't drafted by the Lakers. He was drafted by Charlotte. They made a boneheaded decision. Shaquille O'Neal, that was a little bit different. He kind of forced his way into a different situation. He could have stayed with Orlando, and they would have been fine. They would have competed. I don't think Penny would have broke down the way that he did if he wasn't the only player. If it was him and Shaq, I think they would have done something special. They most likely would have won at least a championship. I don't know if they would have had the success that the Lakers did, but they definitely would have had something going for them. So anyways, let's get into this video. All right, so let me paint you this picture. The number 1 pick in the 2003 NBA draft, not LeBron. No, the national championship Syracuse player of the year, Carmelo Anthony. He goes number 1 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James goes number 2. Detroit doesn't screw this up. They don't get Darko. Everything else pretty much goes into place. You figure with the number 3 pick, let's say they get Darko, and then everyone else. Miami gets Wade, Toronto gets Bosh, and so on and so forth. So we figure we go this route because in that situation, LeBron would have been a great piece to Detroit. Now, they didn't have Rasheed Wallace, and I bet you most of these people, most of you watching, either thought Rasheed was either on that team in '03 to '04 season, but he wasn't. Not yet, anyway. He wasn't on that team till right before the trade deadline. Now, he was actually on the Portland Trail Blazers, then later traded to Atlanta. Was there for like a week, maybe not even. And then gets traded to the Pistons. Now, let's go ahead and say that that trade still goes through. They have Chauncey Billups at the 1, Rip at the 2, LeBron at the 3, which they had Tayshaun Prince at the 3 at the time, which they still have on the bench. Great bench player. That whole team was great. Um, they definitely don't get the credit that they deserve or have the credit, especially at the time. And then you have Rasheed at the 4, Ben Wallace at the 5. I mean, that team is rocking. Um, Ahmed Okur was their backup center. He could really stretch the floor. They just had such a great team. So let's go ahead and say that LeBron James added to the Pistons, beat the Lakers, which they beat the Lakers anyway in real life. So they beat the Lakers. LeBron James has a championship now in year number 1. Year number 2, they end up losing to the Spurs, and they just barely lost to the Spurs. Let's go ahead and say they win. They win the second straight championship. Now, year number 3, they end up losing to Miami. But again, they barely lost to Miami. So let's go ahead. We're gonna say, for the pain of this, for the sake of the picture that I'm trying to paint for you, he wins against Miami. Goes to the finals. He plays Dallas, and we're not gonna have him scared of Dallas. So they go ahead and beat Dallas. So now he's won 3 straight. Something Jordan did twice. Something that Shaq did. Kobe did. But now LeBron James did it in his 3rd year. I mean, right there it shows you his legacy would be changed forever. Now we're in 2006, 2007. Now in this year, that's the year that LeBron James actually took the Cavs, beat the Pistons, and got to the NBA Finals just to lose to San Antonio. So in this situation, with a lot better cast around him than he had in Cleveland, minus Ben Wallace, he actually went to Chicago this year. But you figure with still Chauncey Billups, he still had his team around him. Rasheed probably moves to the 5. They get some other kind of center. It's good enough. They lost 4-0 to Cleveland, or I'm sorry, to San Antonio. They're able to beat San Antonio. San Antonio didn't win many of the games by a significant amount of points. With LeBron James becoming like MVP type LeBron James, he goes ahead. He's going to win this championship. So we're going to give him something that even Jordan hasn't done. He won his 4th championship. So now he is 4-0 in the NBA Finals to start his career. Unfortunately, this is where it doesn't go very well for him after. And now the 2007-2008 year. That's the year that Boston creates their super team. That's the year that Los Angeles gets Pau Gasol. This doesn't change. LeBron James is not able to bring them past that point. Boston beats them in the conference finals. LeBron doesn't get to the finals this year, unfortunately. Not without so much trying to get to that point, but he's not able to do that. Not with the eroding Pistons team. In 2008, 2009, it's the same thing, but unfortunately, the Magic are able to get the best of him. And the same thing goes, Kobe still wins his championship. 2009, 2010, the story just continues. LeBron James may be getting MVPs. Unfortunately, he is not beating Boston. Boston makes it back to the championship, but the Lakers prevail and they win. Which that brings us to the 2010 season, 2010, 2011. Now, in the 2010 offseason, LeBron James originally left to go to Miami, but to make this situation the best it possibly could have been, instead of that, the Detroit Pistons is confident enough to actually make the right moves. So they keep LeBron James and clear a cap. LeBron tells them, "Hey, let's reset this thing." And you know what they do? They listen. And they sign the same players that Miami was able to. LeBron James says, "Come to Detroit. We've won championships." Because again, remember in this situation, at this point, Shaq didn't win a championship with Wade. Wade hasn't won one yet. So that whole franchise hasn't won any championships yet. But Detroit has with LeBron James. Come to this team. Let's make something of it. The organization's winning. Larry Brown still the head coach of his team. Come. Larry Brown at this point is now one of the best coaches of all time, by the way, in this situation. Comes this team. So Bosch comes, they get Wade, they get the rest of the supporting cast. Now there wasn't much at that time. Everyone had to play for minimum salaries. Some players were traded. Um, you know, but let's just say in those, not to get overwhelmed with it, but let's just say it's exactly the same situation. We'll go for the sake of the story and realism, let's go with they won 2 out of the 4. The same that they actually won with Miami. So again, that was 4 championships they won in a row. Add 2 more, now we're 6 for 8. So LeBron James, so let's say they lose against the Mavs, which they may not have actually lost against in this situation. Yeah, I just say that just because in 2010, and no one won a championship. Wade was the only one, and they didn't have that experience. But at this point, you have LeBron James just steamrolling people. Uh, but for the sake of the story, we'll say they win 2 out of 4. So they win against Dallas. I'm sorry, they lose against Dallas. They win against Oklahoma. They win again against the Spurs, and then they lose to the Spurs in the following season. That's the story that we're given anyway. So now LeBron James has to make a decision. Now he lost now twice in these finals, which is not used to losing. But now he's looking at Wade, not the same. He's looking at Bosch, not the same. Players are not the same they were before. He doesn't believe that he can win anymore with this team. And he's thinking about making a move. Now, since he didn't go to Cleveland, he wasn't drafted by Cleveland. He has no ties to Cleveland other than physically living there. But he has no ties to the city of Cleveland. He doesn't go. No. No. When this happened, when he chose Cleveland, I thought it was a possibility. Obviously, most people thought it was a possibility, an odd possibility, but it was possible. There's 2 places that I want him to go to, and maybe 3. I really did want him going to the Spurs. I'm a Lakers fan, so obviously I wanted to go to the Lakers. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I wanted him to go to the Lakers because there was a big time where they were talking about like Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James coming to the Lakers, and every player gets rumored to the Lakers. Obviously, LeBron ended up coming to the Lakers at some point, but I wanted him to go to the Warriors at the time. I was looking at the Warriors before they won that championship, and I really liked that team. Now, when I used to play, I was shooting threes all the time. Nowhere near, obviously, those guys, but I love shooting threes. And specifically Stephen Curry. I mean, he's probably a little bit taller than me. I'm 6'1". I think he's like 6'3". Just looks really tiny shooting the ball. Amazing three-point shooter. Greatest three-point shooter of all time. That whole team was amazing. And how it has been for a very long time. That was the team. They beat Denver in the first round. I think they lost to the Clippers or the Spurs in the second round. That was in the 2013-2014 season, that 2014 playoffs. I was thinking, you know what? If LeBron James goes to that team would fit him really well. They're young, which you need. They're great three-point shooters, which works great with LeBron, which probably would have helped him even be better at shooting threes. He would have been shooting with Steph and Clay. I mean, they even made Draymond a pretty good three-point shooter for a while. Sucks now, but you figure LeBron James going to Golden State, the year that they ended up winning the finals anyway. They could have done it. They would have had to get rid of Bogut. They would have had to not sign Andre Iguodala. I mean, they could have done it. So let's say they get him. LeBron James comes to Golden State. It's possible. You could look at it. They could have got him. He goes to Golden State. Who's going to beat him? Who do you think beats Golden State that year? I mean, no one did anyway. No one from the East was going to beat Golden State, especially that year. I mean, LeBron James got there. I mean, the Celtics weren't going to do it. No one was going to do it. So you have LeBron James winning his 7th championship out of 9 tries. Who's going to beat him the second year? No one. The team that actually won was Cleveland with LeBron. If if LeBron's on Golden State, excuse me, but they're just going to steamroll everybody. It's starting to feel like the Bulls, isn't it? So he wins his 8th championship. 8 out of 10. Who beats him the next year? That would have been the year that Kevin Durant came. But who beats them? Can you think of somebody? Because I can't. I can't think of anybody that beats Golden State with LeBron. I want to go ahead and just mark off, forget the season for the next 2 years because it's just Golden State. Now, as a Laker fan and most of the league, everyone would hate it. You know, they're the evil guys. They're just that good. I don't know if any of you guys saw the Bleacher Report video that they did, and it was like they're the evil guys. That's pretty much what it would have been. They would have just been the bad guys. They're the villains. They just kick everyone's ass. The 4 championships, plus the 6 that he won prior. I'm sorry, plus the 4 that they won prior. That gets them 8. I'm sorry, no. You had the 4 plus the 2. Yeah, the 6. I was right originally. That's got him 10 championships. 10 championships. Now, what he does from there, we don't know. Because in real life, he just kept on winning. And that next year, they end up breaking down and they lost to Toronto. We could say that happens. It makes sense. We could even throw that into the situation. Could. Now, the situation is that he actually does go to Los Angeles. He goes to the Lakers. He wants to do something new. His son, Bronny, he wants him playing in the organizations that he's playing in. Okay, no problem. LeBron James joins the Lakers. Another historic franchise. LeBron James gets hurt. We can keep that the same. They don't make the playoffs. You know what? It was probably better for him anyway. He gets Anthony Davis. Now things change. The team, Golden State, breaks down just the way that they did. Because you figure they broke down anyway. They went to the finals without LeBron James. They didn't need him. Probably did. Broke down. Wasn't able to finish. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Draymond Green pretty much being the only player that they had on their team against Kawhi Leonard. Let's say now the coronavirus throws it out the window right now. It's all kind of weird. People are talking about an asterisk against this championship if whoever wins it. If Giannis wins it, asterisk. They'll probably won't talk about it much if it's that. But if it's LeBron, oh my God, asterisk. Doesn't count. LeBron James this, LeBron James that. I'm gonna go ahead and say, let's go ahead and say Lakers win the championship. He goes 11 out of 13 championships. Now the story really changes now, doesn't it? Now you're thinking, how can LeBron James not be the greatest of all time? He has the same amount of rings as Bill Russell does, but he has double the stats and not rebounds. It's absurd rebounds back then. 25 rebounds a game. Come on. But you have LeBron James being like second in points, third in points maybe. Yeah, his career's not even over, but you figure second in points, first maybe in points, but let's say second in points, third in points. He's way up there. He's right up there with Kobe. He's up there with, the mailman, Kareem close. He's right there. He's past Jordan. He's past Jordan every statistic that they keep track of. It's not championships. But again, championships is a team sport. And it's very hard to get to that point without a real team and real organization. Now, if any of you guys watched the documentary The Last Dance, which I'm sure most of you have, it's a very good documentary. But Krause is like organizations win championships. Jordan's like, nah, players win championships. And yeah, definitely players do play a huge factor into it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you need that organization, don't you? You need the coach. You need to be able to draft well. You need the organization. Just as much as the organization needs that great player. Because if you look back, I mean, other than that '04 Pistons team, can you really think of a team that didn't have a star player? I mean, it doesn't happen very often. You need a star. LeBron James would have been that star. It could have been that star for a majority of the championships, for 11 out of 13 championships. And his career's not even over. I mean, he could have maybe won the following year's championship. You imagine 12. Can't think of anyone that'd ever be in that situation. But LeBron James could have. And it all mattered a little bit of him being too good in the beginning. And part of it was they weren't able to draft very well because LeBron actually brought him to a pretty high level. And even if they could, Cleveland would have messed it up. They always seem to mess it up, which will be another video I'll come out with as soon as I can on what organizations were just so shitty over the last 20 years. Not so much in free agency, but I'm talking drafts. Who really botched the draft the most? Who really screwed the pooch? That'll be my next video. But anyways, just want to bring some perspective about this. LeBron James, the player, he's definitely up there. People argue he's not in top 10. Some people say, in my opinion, LeBron James is either number one or number two. And honestly, I have Jordan like 3 or 4. His accomplishments, I would put 1. But when we're talking about the greatest player of all time, in my opinion, it's either Wilt or it's LeBron. Because they're that high on the list and yet had little to no support for a majority of their careers. Now, a lot of people talk about Wilt being, it was self-induced because he had the ball so much that they actually start winning more when he stopped shooting so much. So that may be the case. But LeBron James, if he could have been put in a better organization with a better coach, better teammates, they would have won more. And then no one would have argued that he's the greatest player of all time. Plus, you really have to look at it. Um, if LeBron James would have been drafted to that Detroit team, Detroit wasn't able to get past the conference finals until that year. So the perspective of how it would have looked, LeBron James takes him over the hump. Then they beat the Lakers. I mean, that would have been huge. Then they beat the Spurs, which was, I mean, I guess that was more towards the middle of their dynasty. But then it beats the Spurs. Yeah. Then the next year beats upcoming Miami team. Boom. Beats Dallas. So. Dallas was a good story when it happened. And then beats the Spurs again. I mean, the Spurs wouldn't have been the same. Tim Duncan wouldn't have been a top 10 player of all time. Take away 2 of his championships, wins 3. You'd probably be looking at Akeem a little bit better than you'd be looking at Tim Duncan. So Detroit would have been looked at a lot differently. At the same point, if LeBron would have not left that team to join and make a super team, if he would have told his players, Wade, Bosh, come to me, it would have been looked at differently. And then you look at once he actually leaves Detroit and he goes, I can't do this anymore with this team. I gotta look out for me. I gotta make my money. He goes to the perfect situation, especially in the time in the world where tech was getting so big, Silicon Valley is so big. He goes to Golden State. Golden State hasn't won anything. Same situation, well, similar to Detroit. Even better, though, for him, at least perspective wise. He goes to a team that hasn't won anything. Won once in the first round. In a while, anyway. It's been a long time. Since I think the time before that happened, that was when they were the 8th seed and they upset the Dallas team. So in this situation, he goes to Golden State and he makes that. I mean, obviously now we would know the situation, but at that point, if that would have been the situation, no one would have known any better. He would have brought a team in Golden State, the Bay Area. He would have brought them a championship. Curry wouldn't have ever been a real MVP type player. He would have been a really good all-star, but not an MVP type player. You probably could tack on a couple more MVPs for LeBron at that point. Being the number 1 record, making Curry look good, making Clay look good. Draymond Green looks good now. I mean, as good as he can. Good defensive player, energy player. That's perfect for LeBron. Absolutely perfect. Spacing the ball. Both those guys, handling the ball, Steph Curry handling the ball. That team would have been epic. Absolutely epic. Got Steve Kerr. Would have made Steve Kerr one of the best coaches, in a long time. And you look at, so you have Larry Bird. Oh, I'm sorry, Larry Brown, who wins, instead of the 1 championship, he wins 6. So now he has 6 championships. And then Kerr has 4. And then Vogel probably has 2. But anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. That's all I wanted to really talk about. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting out more videos as soon as I can. I appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.